Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Cotter.
Hi, I'm Kim Griffith.
Well, Kim, one of the most common questions I have in regards to us writing a book is how I wrote a book with someone that I'd never met before.
People are curious about that.
Yes, we talked about our mastermind group and how we've met digitally, but we never met in person, and we don't live in the same state.
Nope.
So it was quite a process, and I think we should share that.
It was really a fun process because through the joys of technology, we were able to very efficiently and easily write a book. So I set up a Zoom meeting, and we spent a lot of time talking about how this book was going to come together.
Right. And if you're not familiar with Zoom, it's just an online platform where we can video chat and have a video meeting.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, if I remember right, we met together weekly. Obviously sometimes more than once a week, but I know we had weekly scheduled meetings, and we would kind of discuss. We kind of did it chapter by chapter once we got into the book. And go ahead.
So you might remember we did a lot of pre-planning.
Mm-hmm.
So we created our characters before we ever wrote a word so that we could get to know them as people. Like you had mentioned, we had pictures and so forth. In fact, the pictures of our characters still sit on my desktop. And we had outlined our book of all the scenarios and all of the challenges that we wanted to put them in. Do you remember that?
Yes. And I remember that we didn't use a lot of them.
Yes.
We have a lot of unused material.
Yes.
But yes, it was, and so I remember that we would get on, and we would, once we were to the point of writing, and we would kind of sit down and we would just say, okay, what do we want to happen in this chapter? Mm-hmm. Kind of an overview, like what's an end goal, and maybe what's a way that we can go around to getting it. And Gifted is an adventure series. It's an adventure book. And so it is very action-packed, and there's a lot of adventure in it. And so we had to, plan that out and do that. And I remember that you told me one time about a particular adventure and scenario in the book that you wrote, and kind of that process of doing that. And I thought it might be fun if you shared that with us.
So typically I wrote on Saturday mornings. It was quiet at home. I wasn't pressured to be anywhere. And I would go up to my office and sit down at the computer with all of the notes from our discussions about how we wanted the chapter to go. And I would sit and write until all of the ideas were out of my head and onto the paper. And sometimes that happened in a couple of hours. Sometimes it took all day or any time in between. And I would get the whole chapter written to the degree that I could. And then, if you will recall, I emailed that to you so that you could fluff it. You're the best fluffer.
Yes, Kim and I came up with, we invented a word while we were writing this book. And, like you said, we put raw ideas down on paper. And then on the keyboard, and we would send those files back and forth with each other. And Kim really liked the way that I edited, changed, embellished, and we called it fluffing. We developed the term fluffing for just kind of taking what we had and really expanding it and adding to it. And it was definitely a fun process to do that. I remember. Oh, go ahead.
The thing that I loved about that contribution I kind of saw it as putting the skeleton and the muscles together, and then you would put a beautiful skin and clothing on it, kind of polish it up and make it look really good. It just is it was an excellent team effort.
Yeah, yeah, it was great. And, I was going to say, I remember one time, it was probably towards the middle of the book. Like you said, we met kind of couple times during the week. You had you got together with me, and you said that you were having writer's block, and we were on a particular chapter, and you just weren't liking anything that was getting down on paper, and I was like, okay, well, let me just take it. And it was the first time that we had kind of encountered this, in the process.
Changed roles.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember that, and I remember that chapter, and I remember everything about it. And it was at a time where I was leaving to go on a trip, and I went on a trip with my brother. And I don't know if you psyched me out, saying that you had writer's block, but I felt like I had writer's block on the trip. And I remember we were at a resort. It was at the beach. And I remember sitting out at the pool with the laptop, and it just, it never came. And I remember one night lying in bed, and it just came. And it came so fast that I couldn't even type it all out. I would type a sentence, press enter, type another sentence, and just hopefully, getting the flow of what had entered my mind. And I bring that up because I feel like that's how this book was written, whether it was you or whether it was me. It was just like the stuff that flowed through us. And if you've never written a book, like, I don't even know how you would explain it, but it just came.
It does just come. People talk about having a book in them. I don't think you actually have a book in you, because you pull it out. It comes to you, and it comes to you not necessarily all at once. Like, one of my favorite things writing in the book was an impossible situation. And I thought, how am I going to resolve this situation that is impossible? It just seems so impossible. And I literally stopped and sat back in my chair and closed my eyes and thought about all the ways could I possibly resolve the situation. And I didn't care for any of them. They weren't spectacular. They weren't fun. They weren't interesting. And I just relaxed and let it be. And then it came to me. It's a story. I'm a writer. I can make it go any way I want it to. And so I did.
And it was great. And I remember when I read that, and I remember texting you or calling you and saying, oh my gosh, I didn't see that coming. And that's one of the most favorite parts of our book. We've read it tons as we've edited and written. And I'm an avid reader, and I love to read, and I love adventures. And one of the things that I love is, even though I've read this so many times, it'll still get to points where I'm like, I can't turn the page fast enough. I can't read fast enough because I want to know what's going to happen next. And it's just such a fun process.
Well, I think in some of the ways it's kind of fun too, because where we had options, how should this go? Shall it go this way? Shall it go that way? Should we do this? Should we do that? As you read it, I don't know about you, but I think about, what if it had gone this way? Or what if it had gone that way? What if we had chosen differently? Although I do like the way we took it.
So do I. As we talk about this, it makes me think about how, I will go back and read the book now, and there are certain things that I remember, like I wrote that, but some things I have no idea who wrote it, whether it was you or whether it was me. And I think that just fits into how well our writing and our creative process fit together. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that you would ever see that this was written by two different authors,
Right.
in a negative way. If anything, it was a positive way because we had two imaginations working together to make this wonderful adventure story.
Right, right. And that's one of the great compliments from the handful of people who have actually read it. They have said that I can't tell where one of you ends and the next one starts. Our styles are very similar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if I summed it up, I know both of us would say this, but effortless is a key word.
It was totally effortless. We're going to do it again.
We will.